Okay, Daf, you test on base on the bottom. Got stuck I got stuck last week at this place, and I think with Mendy Shapir's help actually, and looking at it again, I think we figured it out. Sometimes you just don't overthink. You know what I'm saying? There's a Gemarrah that's could be simple. We overthink the Gemarrah. Okay, in our Mishnah. Now, Mishnah, basically, what happened in our Mishnah? In our Mishnah, we brought down the different things that the Chacham said that you have to. Chacham said that you daim shniyas him. Your hands are considered a shemel tuma, the secondary tuma, even though there's no such thing. But the Chachamim brought to be extra strict with the tahara, tuma, etc. And the Chacham gave us a few ways to get out of that tuma, to wash your hands, toivel your hands, etc. And then the Gemarrah brought down if someone toivelt for chulin and he had a kavanah chulin, he cannot eat ma'aser. So you have to go to the mikveh and have the kavanah. We discussed that. And then we discussed the concept of someone that has his garments, an amma someone that is not careful about tuma and tahara, so his garments would be considered a midrash would be considered a midrash for someone else. Midrash basically makes the person tummy. So if an amaret's garments touches a person that is careful about eating chulin in purity, so if you're careful to eat chulin in purity, you cannot touch an amaret's clothing garments, and the levels go up. If someone is careful about eating everything in tuma, that level of kedusha, or a kodesh level of kedusha, or chatas, or paraduma level of kedusha. So therefore, you cannot, if you're that careful, you cannot touch the garment of someone that's eating at a lesser tahara. So basically, there's levels that are called maila in the Mishnah, that certain levels in tahara, and if you are holding yourself and conducting yourself at a higher level, there's an issue there would be an issue if you touch the garments of someone that's at a lower level. That's what the Mishnah is saying. So if you're lower level, if you're careful about eating something at a lower level of tahara, the person that's eating at a higher level of tahara cannot touch your garments. That was the Mishnah. So now the Meli is saying here on the Afitesim base, he's basically saying there's a machloikas in chulin. In Gemarrah chulin there's a machloikas, which the Gemarrah is going to bring down to some degree. The machloikas is whether if someone is so careful about eating simple chulin bread or chulin whatever, apples, but he's always careful about eating that in such a level of purity, just like the level of eating a korban. So the machlokes is, does the actual bread of chulin attain that level of kedusha? Not that it's holy, but attain the level of kedusha that if it were to become tamei, there's an issue. Can it, basically, we said that chulin, right? We said that chulin does not go further than sheni. Chulin goes until here. Shlishi can only be tuma or kadashim. But if you are careful to eat chulin just like the level of tuma or kadashim, can now this one be an issue of eating kadashim? Basically, can it continue? Can it travel on? Would it attain such a level? And there's a machlokes in the Gemarrah there. So the Meli wants to say, one guy says yes, it attains that level, and one opinion says no. So the Meli wants to bring proof from our Mishnah that someone that is careful about eating chulin at the level of purity of tuma or kadashim, the chulin piece becomes the level of kadashim. How does it bring that proof? Because the Mishnah does not bring us that, does not say that an amaretz is careful, an amaretz, his garments would be considered tamei for the person that eats chulin b'tahara. And it should have continued and said that a person that eats chulin, not b'tahara, but chulin at the level of kedusha, if someone eats chulin at the level of kedusha, should be careful touching the garments of someone that eats chulin of the level of tahara of chulin. Because the Mishnah doesn't say that. Why does the Mishnah not say it? Because the Mishnah talks about kedusha, about a korban. The Mishnah talks about tumas. Therefore, he doesn't have to mention, because yes, if someone conducts himself at such a pure level that he eats chulin on the level of kodesh, the chulin is considered kodesh. and therefore the Mishnah doesn't have to mention it because the Mishnah mentions kodesh. So the reason why he brings this proof is because the Mishnah mentions kodesh. And chulin is kodesh. Chulin that you eat, conduct yourself on such a high level is considered kodesh. Is considered a korban. That's this proof that he wants to bring. So, Amar Avmeh, Shema Mina. We learn from our Mishnah, chulin shnaisel tahasa kodesh. Chulin that is made on the level of kodesh is considered kodesh. Memai, how do we know that? Because the Mishnah doesn't enumerate, doesn't say an additional step in the garment situation, that if someone that is that eats on a level of chulin betahara, his garments would make tamei someone eats chulin on the level of kodesh. Why doesn't he mention it? Because he mentions kodesh, and once he mentions kodesh, that the chulin is considered kodesh. That's what he is saying. So ask them all. The Gemarrah knocks it down. V'dilma heidelik tana b'mayla. So it's not going to prove why, because the reason it's not brought down that if someone eats chulin on the level of kodesh, he should not touch the garment of someone that eats chulin on the level of tahara, because
he should not eat. He should not what?
He should not touch the garment of someone that eats chulin betahara. There's two things. There's eating chulin on the level of just being pure, tahara, toil, and there's chulin eating at the level of tuma, and there's chulin eating at the level of kadashim, and chulin eating at what's it called? So we're talking about eating chulin. The question was also, does the chulin become so holy that it attains the same kedusha of kodesh? Or
chulin betzim you could eat betuma.
Chulin can eat, tagi can eat betuma. So there, but the
parush, the guy is eating betahara.
So the parush eats it betahara. Then there's a higher level than the parush. It eats it at a level not stam betahara, not stam that he's stole, but he eats it. He's so careful as if were to be tuma, or as if were to be kodesh. The Mishnah doesn't say that because tuma, the chulin that you eat and you handle on the level of kodesh is kodesh. And that's why the Mishnah doesn't have to mention it, because the Mishnah does mention kodesh. So, and this is it's not that easy to understand. It's like an interesting concept. It's a new concept that we learned. If someone would prepare chulin at such a level, it attains a level of kodesh. In any case, the Mishnah, the Gemarrah knocks it down because there's another. We can bring proof that this is the case, because here's what the Gemarrah is saying.
It's only kodesh for him, not for someone else.
It's kodesh for him, yeah.
It's regular.
But it's chulin,
someone else comes over it, it's not enough.
If someone else comes over it and touches, then that person will not be able to eat it, because then he doesn't know what his status of tuma is. But the Mishnah is going to answer. The Gemarrah is going to answer. Is going to knock this concept down, because it said there's another Mishnah that says that you can eat chulin. That it says that if you eat chulin, if you prepare chulin on taharas kodesh is this level, then it just attains the level of this kedusha. But again, to confuse things more. So the Mishnah over there is a machlokes whether chulin that is made at this level attains this kedusha or not. So therefore, our Mishnah is ambiguous. It's not really clear. You could say this way, you can say that way. So it's not proof. So basically, I said, what's the reason they didn't bring down this concept that if someone eats chulin on the level of kodesh, he cannot touch the garments of someone who eats chulin on a Torah level? Why isn't it bring it down? Because it's very simple. The idam of the tuma, if the chulin is at the level of tuma, as we will see in a moment, so he mentions tuma. If you're eating chulin on the level of kodesh, it's just considered chulin. So it mentions chulin in the Mishnah. Chulin. If you make chulin on the level of kodesh, the highest level, right? It's considered chulin. That doesn't make a difference that you prepared at the level of kodesh. No, it doesn't attain the level of kodeshim. It only attains the level of tuma. So basically, it's the Mishnah is not mentioning it because you can translate it in many different ways. So you cannot concretely learn from our Mishnah to say that if someone eats chulin on the level of kadashim, that it becomes kadashim itself. So basically, we have a machlokes. Whether chulin that he eats on the level of kadashim stays chulin, or becomes tuma, or becomes kadashim. And you can swing it in either way. That's what basically he's saying. You can swing this in either way. So it's not just because it doesn't mention it does not mean that it means kaddish. It could be tuma, it could be chulin. It's an interesting concept. It's basically that's basically knocking down the this proof. And now the Gemarrah is bringing a much easier proof. Elam Seifa. The Mishnah brought on this whole story about different people, different individuals that were at a certain level of kedusha. They ate in this level, they ate in that level. So the Mishnah brings this down. So here the proof whether chulin that is done on the level of kaddishim is considered kaddishim, we learn from the Sefer Mishnah. What does it say? Yosef ben Yezer, a chassid shebakahuna. Yosef ben Yezer was considered a chassid. He went way above and beyond the law in kahuna. He would eat everything at the level of tuma, and his garments were at the level would be considered a midas, a tamei. It's something that it could make you tamei. It's someone that eats on the level of kodesh. Yochanan ben Gudgaida, he would eat the level at the food at a much higher level. Kol Yamav. And his mitpachas, his garment, was basically, he would eat chulin on the level of kodesh, and for him, his garment was not watched enough to be good enough for someone that eats on a higher level of chata, which is pala aduma. Zakti, what do we learn out? Lachatos for chatos, yes, it's not good enough, and therefore it's considered midas. Lekoidesh loy, but your garment is holy enough for someone else that eats at the same level. Why is that? Because when you eat chulin at the level of kodesh, the chulin is considered kodesh. It's like kodesh. So basically, the Gemarrah stays with this, that according to our Mishnah, if an individual eats chulin at such a pure level that how you would eat a korban, then the chulin is considered as kodesh and would be makabel tuma and can continue and pass on tuma as well. Okay, so this is the end of that Gemarrah. We're starting a whole new sugya. This is actually very interesting with a bunch of stories. So let's do this. Amar Rabbi Yonasan ben Elazar. The Gemarrah is going to bring 3 stories, and then the Gemarrah is going to try to analyze these and break it down and go back and forth till we finish this page. Next page. Amar Rabbi Yonasan ben Elazar. Rabbi Yonasan ben Elazar said like this: Nafla ma'afartoi hemeno. If someone is walking and his scarf fell down, or a shmata, basically something that you wrap around your neck, it fell off. And he sees a person standing there, and apparently he knows him, and it says, okay, Tunali, give me the scarf. And he gave it to him. Tamei, the scarf is tamei. So there's an introduction to this Gemarrah. There is a concept of hesach hadas. Hesach hadas is basically if your attention is being taken away with something else. If you are supposed to watch something from becoming tamei, the thing is considered watched as long as you never take off your mind of it. You have to constantly be careful and have in mind, I'm watching this. There are a lot more details to this, so we're not going to go into. But let's say I have an item that I want to make sure that I can eat it with tahara, or I want to make sure that this garment doesn't become tamei. So I have to constantly watch it. If I let it out of my eyesight, let's say, and I forget about this item for a split moment, because I forgot about it, I have hesach hadas, it's not considered tamei. Even though you can almost be positively sure that nothing touched it that would make it tamei. Still, hesach hadas is so strong that if you're trying to conduct yourself to eat and conduct yourself in the pure way, in an impure way with tahara, hesach hadas would make the garment, the item, the food tamei. So the next 3 cases are discussing different types of hesach hadas. In the first case, the scarf fell off, someone else is picking up, because the other guy is lifting it, even though I'm watching him, it is considered hesach hadas that I'm letting someone else handle the scarf. That's the Yonasan ben Elazar says that's considered hesach hadas, and therefore the scarf becomes tamei. Case number 1. Case number 2. Amar Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram. He's at home, he's about to get dressed to go out on a weekday, and he's supposed to get in his he's put on his weekday clothing, and he reaches into the closet, and he obviously wants to do everything but tahara, so he constantly has his mind on his weekday clothing, and by mistake he takes out his Shabbos clothes, velovshan, and he puts on his Shabbos clothes, and then he realizes, oh, I'm wearing my Shabbos clothes. So basically, what happens is my mind is constantly thinking I'm wearing weekday clothes, and my mind is on the weekday clothes. I'm not letting my mind go away from the weekday clothes. But now I'm not only thinking that, I'm thinking that the clothes that I'm wearing, they are the weekday clothes. So because it turns out that they're not, it means that your mind was not there. Your mind was not on the weekday garments. So therefore, those garments now become tummy. Both. The Shabbos garments are tummy because you're not thinking about the Shabbos garments, and the weekday garments are tummy because you're not thinking of the weekday garments, because you confuse the garments. So here we have a case of Hesach Hadas in the sense that you didn't forget about the garment, but you weren't thinking about the specific garment. You thought it's a different garment, so yes, your mind was not on that garment. So in that case, have a Hesach Hadas. The Gemarrah says that it's nitmu, that tummy. Then the Gemarrah is going to knock down this whole premise that just this whole idea of if you think about one item and you confuse yourself with another item, that it's considered Hesach Hadas. The third case is the same idea. Amar B'Elazar B'Yitzchak. Ma'aseh b'shtei Batzodik. Sorry, Batzodik. Ma'aseh b'shtei Nashim Chaveiros. There are two women. They were not friends actually.
I did it for the video, not for.
Oh, thank you. Ma'aseh b'shtei Nashim Chaveiros. There are two women. They're not friends. Chaveiros means just like there's an ish chaver, a person that's considered a chaver. What's a chaver? Talmid Chacham, someone that is learned, and he doesn't. The Gemarrah says that a chaver does not put out anything under his hands that is not metukan. A woman of such a person is called a chavera, or a daughter of such a person. Any female that's dependent on that person is considered if she follows his way, that's just considered a chaver. So there's two women. They are wives or daughters of such a person that is careful about tuma and tahara. They went to the bathhouse and they got out and they, by mistake, mixed up their garments. So now one is wearing the other garments. The story came from ט.ב-כ, basically because they said that we are usually careful about eating, but tahara, everything but tahara. Now we mixed our garments. So ט.ב-כ said, Timon says, yes, your garment is considered tameh, and therefore you are considered tameh. Okay, so these are the three cases. Why is the garment considered tameh? Because again, this woman constantly thinks about her garment and the garment that she's wearing and guards them. The moment she wears someone else's garments and she thinks about the garment she's wearing, but the truth is she's not thinking about her own garment. She thinks it's her own garment, and then she realizes actually she wasn't wearing her own garment. So, because that's considered Hesach Hadas, you're not thinking about your garment, you're thinking about a garment that you think is yours. You're not thinking about your garment, that is considered Hesach Hadas, and that's why it's tameh. That's why ט.ב-כ said it's tameh. That is right now the premise, that's what we think, the logic behind this. Okay, so there's three stories, the Gemarrah is going to start, analyzing each one. Maskevla Reb Oishia. Reb Oishia asked, if that's the case, if you think about one item, and you take out another item thinking that is a different item, then every time the other item should be considered tameh. So if that's the case, if someone puts in his hand into a basket, in order to take a loaf of bread that's made out of wheat, and then he takes out a bread and then realizes that the bread is made out of barley, is hachanam. So because he's always careful about the bread could be tahara. Nothing is touching the bread. But again, the concept of Hesach Hadas is that because you want to conduct yourself in the level of tahara, therefore we are more machmir, we're more stringent, and we say that if you ever take your mind off, that becomes tahara because you are careful. Not because it's real tahara, but we make you tahara. So here is also, you take out a piece of bread, the bread is tahara, everything is tahara, you are tahara, you take out a piece of bread, and you think, I'm taking out a piece of wheat bread. And he lifts it out, and I'm thinking about the wheat bread. And he sees, oh no, it's barley bread. So basically, you're thinking constantly about the wheat bread, but no, it's barley bread. So therefore, you have Hesach Hadas. The barley bread should become tummy. But we don't say that. And if you would say that yes, that's true that the barley bread will become tummy. Another case. And the meforshim already say that the truth is the question could only be brought on from the blatt. You don't even have this whole story with pas. Because look at the blatt. What does it say clearly in this blatt? If someone is guarding a barrel and he thinks that inside the barrel is wine, so he's watching the barrel, that the barrel should not become tamei. He's thinking it's a wine barrel. V'nimtzes, and he finds out later that that the barrel is of oil. So he has what we just said before, what we consider hisachadas, because he thinks about wine and it's not wine. So he does not think about the oil, so it's hisachadas. The Braisa says the barrel is toil. What does it say? That the barrel is toil and will not make anything else tummy. So we see that even though the person has hisachadas, he does not think about the oil. You don't say that the barrel of oil is tummy. So therefore, the question is on a few stories here. The question is on any story that we mentioned, all stories that we mentioned here. We said that if you had hisachadas confusing the garments or confusing the Shabbos clothing, or the two women are changing this hisachadas. No, here we have a case where he's guarding a barrel of wine, so he thinks, and it turns out it's oil. We say that there's no hisachadas here. It's the same thing as wanting to put on Shabbos weekday clothing and put on Shabbos clothes. It's the same thing of woman wearing someone else's garments. So that's a question that the Gemarrah asks. So the Gemarrah counters. According to your reasoning that it should be toil. Look in the seif of that same blaisa. If the barrel of shemen is toil, why does the sefer later say that you cannot consume the oil? You cannot eat the oil. Why can't you eat the oil? Because the oil is tameh. So besides the fact that there's an issue in this blaisa, the shemen is toil tameh, but the shemen is tameh milechel. What's going on? You cannot eat the shemen, but it's not. So it means that's a simple thing. The guy that's watching it explains his watching. What did he watch? What did I do? Shamartio midavar hametamo. I watched it. I watched the oil from becoming tamei at such a level of tuma that he can pass on the tuma. But v'loy midavar hapoisa, I did not watch it from the level of tuma that will make it tamei but not pass on the tuma. We said that at certain levels it stops. It's called puzzle. So therefore, the Braisa says the shemen is tohoid milatame. It is pure from passing on the tumah, but itself is tameh because it retains the tumah. So basically, we're saying there's no hisachadas, because if there would be hisachadas, it would be considered tameh also to be metame. Again, if you say there's hisachadas and the barrel of oil is tameh, then the barrel of oil is tameh all the way. Not only tameh from eating, but it would also be tameh to pass on the tumah, because you don't know what. Here we say, I had in mind to watch it guarded at a certain level. I didn't think of the highest level. I watched at a higher level, but I didn't watch it at a lower level. So basically, you had this. It would still be the same hisachadas, but you still say that it's toil, because you did not have you thought it was a barrel of wine. It turns out it's a barrel of oil. That is considered hisachadas according to what we say, and you still say it's toil. If it would be real hisachadas, it would be tameh all the way. Okay. Okay, so the Gemarrah counters again. Does this concept exist that you watch something only halfway? I'm only watching for this tuma, not the other tuma. Can I watch a barrel of oil or wine or whatever it is only for halfway? That this tuma yes, this tuma not. And the Gemarrah in yes there is. Vatanya we saw in a blaisa. Vatanya here is benichosa. We saw in a blaisa. Hoishid yoda basal. If someone is carrying vasalak sefer, he's carrying a basket of figs. Rashi says, on his shoulder, and he puts his hand into the basket and wants to take out some figs. And inside the basket is also a shovel. A maglefa, the shovel is usually a shovel that you use in order to empty out the coals of an oven. Sometimes you use, Rashi says, sometimes you use this maglefa, the shovel, in order to separate the figs that harden and are sticking together. So this shovel is inside the basket as well. And it touches the maglefa. And his entire time he's thinking about, I want to make sure that the basket and the figs inside the basket do not become tummy. Make sure that he only thinks about the basket and the figs. And he was not thinking about the actual shovel. What do we say? What do we say in that light? A sal toil, that the basket is considered toil with the figs inside it. But the shovel is actually tummy. So now we see that a guy has a basket, his two items in his basket, figs and a shovel, and we say that he only thinks about half. He thinks about he doesn't think about the shovel, and he thinks about the figs. So we see that we can only think about half a thing. Proof is not full yet, because the Gemarrah is going to ask a question right now. If the maglefa, if the shovel is tamei, why can't the shovel make the basket tamei? If the shovel is inside the basket, and the shovel you did not have in mind on, so the shovel is tamei, let the shovel make the basket tamei, and let the shovel make the figs tamei.
1 second. This is a raya back
To say that you could
before that you could do half.
Yes, yes, you can watch half. So for the Gemarrah, tetame, the Gemarrah says, but tetame hamagrefa lasal, maybe the shovel should make the basket tamei. And for the Gemarrah, enkli matamekli, there's a concept that an item, an object cannot be matame another object at that level of tuma. So therefore, the shovel cannot make the basket tamei. But 1 second, that's about a kli. What about the figs? It's food. Tetame hamagrefa lasal. V'letame masha basal. Let the shovel make whatever is inside the basket tamei. Amar Avina, again, he explains his way of Shmila. But he says, this is what I did. Shamautiv midova shemetamoi. I watched the shovel from becoming tamei that it shouldn't be able to pass on the tuma. But not, I didn't watch it enough to make sure that it is not that the shovel itself will become tamei. So now the shovel is at a tuma level that it is tamei. That's what the Mishnah says. The shovel is tamei, but the shovel cannot pass on the tumah. So it doesn't, even though it touches the stuff in the basket, it's fine. So here we see now, this is a clear blatt. This blatt, we see that the shovel has half. He's watching the shovel halfway. One half he's watching the shovel that it shouldn't become tamei at such a level that it can pass on the tumah. But at the same time, he's not watching the shovel that the shovel should become tamei in its own. So here we see. So basically, finalize Mikol Mokem Kasha. Summary of this few lines here is basically this. We had 3 stories.
1 second. Mikol Mokem Kasha means it's still shver. Could you do nitirus?
No. Mikol Mokem Kasha. After all we said, we basically are. If we go backwards, we just brought proof that you can watch something halfway. Why did we need that proof? Because we had a question about the oil, the barrel of wine and oil, that he watched the barrel halfway, that he watched it, and therefore the blatt says that barrel is not tummy to pass on the tuma, but the barrel is tummy in itself, you can't eat it. And that was proof to what? That was proof that if you don't know what the item is, but you think about it, that is not considered as a chadas. Go back, Mikol Mokem Kasha, on what the Rabbi Elazar says, the Rabbi Yonah Amon said, that if someone confuses the garments, but he thinks about it, it's considered as hadas. Here from this barrel of oil, this barrel, we see he had hesach hadas, and it does not become tamei. And in the same case, he had hesach hadas. I mean, it's not considered hesach hadas. The barrel of oil, even though he confused the content of the barrel, it is not considered hesach hadas. So why, if you confuse the garments by the ladies, or confuse the garments of Shabbos clothes or weekday clothes, why is that considered hesach hadas? Mikol Mokem Kasha. The oid. He's going to add in another question. Interesting story, 2 stories. And Rabbi asked another question. The story with a lady. She came in front of a shmol. She was obviously a smart lady. She was always trying to do things with tahara. And this is what she told him. And she told him, Rebbe, beged ze adaktiv b'tahara. Garments have to have a minimal measurement in order to become tummy. It has to be 3 etzbois on 3 etzbois, 3 finger breadth by 3 finger breadth. So she told Rabbi Shmuel, from the moment that the garment was going to be makabel tuma, that it's 3 finger breadth, but 3 finger breadth, I made sure that it's done, but that the garment is woven or weaved or woven b'tahara. So what's the problem? But loyoi believe in l'shem tahara. I made sure that I'm tahara, but I didn't have in mind constantly. It wasn't on my mind the entire time. What is the story with this garment? Can we consider it tahara because I always made sure that I'm tahara and the garment is tahara and everything, or because I did not have in mind if we consider tameh? So what did Rabbi Shmuel do? He started investigating. Rabbi Shmuel asked her a lot of questions, picked her brain, and all of a sudden she started remembering things. She told him, "Oh, actually, I remember, Rabbi. Nida mashchaim b'chevel. At some point, I needed help, and a woman that was in nida at that moment, she was in a state of nida. She pulled a string, and now she pulled a string. The garment is already makabel tuma. The whole garment is considered a middle, is considered tameh." What did Rabbi Shmuel say? Rabbi Shmuel, Kama g'dolim divrei chum. How great are the words of the Chum, that they said that we can only rely on something that it retains its level of tahara if you constantly think about it. Because this lady, she also wanted to do tahara, but because she didn't have her mind constant in this garment, she made a mistake. She asked the lady, that's tameh. That's the story number 1. Shuv ma'aseh b'sha'achas. There's another story with a woman. She was in the same story. She was weaving a garment. Amaloi, Rebbe, ma pazu alaktir b'tahara. This tablecloth, I was weaving and I did it b'tahara. V'loi b'li b'sham, and I wasn't careful again by constantly thinking about it. And what does the Gemarrah say? Shmuel again investigated, picked her brain. She told me, I do remember something of it. Nima nifsekali ukshaltia b'fiyah. Here we have to see what this missing word. So Rashi explains over here like this. Let's look at Rashi actually. The nifsekali on the side, at the bottom, it's like narrow lines. Nifsekali. Before I reached the 3 finger breaths by 3 finger breaths, I was still putting together the thread. The thread got disconnected. Before I even started doing anything, so the garment is not yet makabel tuma. What did I do? I had to reconnect the thread. And I put my thread into my mouth, and that's how I connected it. Before I did any weaving, I reconnected the thread with using my mouth. And again, the garment wasn't ready yet, was not in a state that the garment could become tuma. She was a nida woman, and she did not go to mikveh yet. And in that state of tuma, she fixed the thread. Now again, here's the thing: if the thread is dry, then the thread is on the makabel tuma, and it cannot pass anything. If by the time she starts weaving the garment, the thread is totally dry, it's not a problem. But here's the chashash, because she put it in her mouth when she was nida, and then she starts weaving it after she goes to mikveh, she starts kneading, there may be a chashash like Pesach. The matzah, 7 days in, we still think that there might be some flour that's not. Same thing also here. Could be days in that there's still a chashash, there's still a worry that the thread, it has a little bit of a saliva, of a nida saliva, and now she puts it in the bag, she's going to make the whole bag of tameh.
Because she's not keeping her mind on it?
No. They're not keeping her mind is basically, that's how she came in to the Shmuel. She said, Rabbi Shmuel, I want to find out the state of the garment because I did not keep a mind on it. As Rabbi Shmuel was picking her brain, he showed her that because you were not keeping in mind, that's why you didn't think about it with the nida. Because if she would have constantly kept on her mind, I want to make this tahara, I want to make this tahara, I want to make sure the thread is tahara, she would have not done she would have not connected the threads even when she was nida, because she would be careful. But here he found out by investigating. He found out that she reconnected the threads with her mouth. There was saliva. She was a nida, and it is possible that the saliva was still wet as she was weaving into a garment after the garment hit 3 finger breaths.
That automatically renders it tummy.
Yeah. Says when she reached the place of 3 finger breaths, the saliva is still wet. And saliva of a nida is av hatuma. This is the pshat. Then Rashi brings a base of meforshim that it's something else, and Tosfos kind of goes with the second pshat of Rashi. But this is pashut pshat. This is simple, and this is what we are going to go with. That she was reconnected. The Shmuel found out that as she was weaving, getting ready, she reconnected 2 threads with the saliva of her mouth, and now the garment hits 3 finger breath. There's a possibility the saliva is wet, and she makes the whole thing tameh. And it's saying Abba Shmuel again the wide lines. Again, the same great things that Chum is said, that if you had in mind, you make sure that it stays started. If you don't have in mind, it becomes tameh. So now the question is, so now he basically is asking the question. I'm just thinking a second, what was the question now? He's adding another question on what the other one said. The question is that I should finish this off target. The question is basically that if in your mind you were watching the garment, that's all that Shmuel cared about. Did you watch it or not? It doesn't make a difference if someone else was. It doesn't make a difference if you. It doesn't make a difference if you thought it was this and it turns out to be something else. As long as your mind was on it, you're good. So therefore, from these 2 cases, we see again, as long as your mind is on the item, as long as your mind is thinking about your clothing. It doesn't make a difference if it's Shabbos clothing or your weekday clothing. It doesn't make a difference if this woman clothing or that woman clothing. If you were watching these clothing, these garments, it should be fine. Why do you say that by switching and thinking about something else, it's considered Hisachadas? That's what the Gemarrah is basically trying to ask on what we said before. So the Gemarrah answers. According to the story with the ladies in the bathhouse where they switch the garments, we can say something simple. They don't know each other. So when a woman puts on the garment of the other, she says, "Oi, the other lady is a wife of Amoritz. The other lady is a wife of someone that is not careful about tuma. So what am I doing now? And she's wearing my garments. So she stops thinking about her garments because she thinks by now the garments is definitely tummy. So there is Hesach Hadas. Right now you basically gave up about your garments and you forget, you don't watch them anymore because you think that the other lady is a wife and Amoritz. So even though the other lady is tired because she is a chavela, but because the person actually had Hesach Hadas, that's why it becomes tummy. The other lady, she's really she's a wife of an Amoritz, and she's now careful about tumah. And she stops worrying, stops thinking about her own garment that her friend is now wearing, the other lady is not wearing, and therefore that's considered Hesach Hadas. The other story that we said that he switched Shabbos clothes with weekday clothes. Nami, Kivin the Kelim the Shabbos. He says basically that people, we notice ourselves on Shabbos, we go up levels. We go up a level of kedusha. We all put on a sartukah. We become a different person. So Shabbos, the garments of Shabbos are always kept at a higher level of kedusha. So he says like this: Kivin the Kelim the Shabbos Ovid Shimotfei. Because you Shabbos clothing, you always are more careful. And now you're wearing your Shabbos clothes, thinking that they're weekday clothes. You're like, "Oi, I messed up." So now you have Hesach Hadas about your Shabbos clothes. So you actually have Hesach Hadas about your Shabbos clothes. Therefore, your Shabbos clothes are not tameh. The first story brought down that if his scarf fell down, he asked a friend to pick it up. Here, we should say, look, he knows. We're talking about a case. In the beginning, we're talking about a case. We think we're talking about a case that this guy's walking the street with a friend. He knows his friend. He knows his friend is very careful about tuma and tahara. And my scarf fell down, and he asks his friend, I know he didn't tell him that I know, but it says he knows that he's taught. Pick up my scarf. Why is that considered hesach hadas? Why is it just because the other guy is handling it considered hesach hadas? So Zak the Gemarrah, why wouldn't it be considered that his friend is watching it? There's a chazaka. It's something you can argue with, that a person is only careful about his own stuff. When it comes to tahara, he's not careful about his friend's stuff. Even though they know that they're both toilet, he doesn't care. This is my what did when the Rebbe had this big fight with me Yehudi years ago about who's a Yid and the concept of conversion and fake conversions, etc. So they came, Chabad delegates went around to Menedebes and Rabbanim, going around and trying to get them to come on the bandwagon. So there were some, I spoke about it, there were some Rebbes that said, "Dusin is in your flesh. This is not our flesh. So it's not our fight. It's not our war. These are not people that would ever come to our chassidus. It doesn't pertain to us. This doesn't make." And the Rebbe was then later on screaming, "You have a guy sitting in yeshiva. That's a guy in your yeshiva." And like years later, that's what, last year, 2 years ago, there was a story about someone that said in yeshiva that wasn't Jewish. So basically, it's the same thing also. It's not my flesh, it's not my thing, I'm not worried about it. So therefore, if I ask a friend to pick up the garment, the other garment is not. So the question is, but the person is taught, why is it considered hesach hadas? Is that so that if someone else is picking up, that a person is not careful about someone else's items? Someone hired porters, people, donkey drivers, and his workers, and they're carrying tahara, something that's tahara. Rashi explains they're carrying, let's say, wine in a barrel of cheres, in an earthenware barrel. Earthenware barrel, it says that they don't become tamei only if you touch the inside. From the outside, the porters can be tamei. The content will not become tamei. So it says like this. Even though the owner is careful, he wants to have his wine in a tahara state, so he gives it to porters and they are walking. Even though the owner is far away from them, even further than a mill, but the content is still tahara. Why? Because now we are going to assume the reason is tahara because the porters know that they don't know where he is. And basically said that it's possible that he's around the corner and he's going to come in, or he's down the street and he's going to see us. And therefore they don't touch the inside. If he tells his porter, go, I will catch up later. So basically he's giving them, basically telling them that I'm going to be way behind you. And now they're not worried about touching inside. And let's say they get thirsty in the middle of the way and they want to take a drink of wine and they open up the barrel. They're not worried about the owner coming. So if he tells them Lecha, I'm going to come later, as soon as they don't see him anymore, the taharas are considered tamei. So here we see that I hand over a barrel of wine that is tahara into the hands of porters. In the first case, what that we brought down, we say it's tahara.
You're still going to watch it.
So you're still going to watch it. So why do you say that a person does not watch someone else's tahara? So what's the difference with Nareisha and Seifa? Why in the Nareisha do we say that if I give it over to someone else to carry it, we say that it's tahara? In the Seifa, it becomes tamei. What are we talking about? In the Reisha, he said the guy's crazy, and he wants to make sure that the content will stay tahara. So it tells the porters, I'm going to hire for a job. Before you pick up my barrel, you're going to go to mikveh. You're going to become tahara. You can only work for me if you're tahara. So that's what happened. And now he sends them on the way. So because right now, even if they open the barrel and they take out the wine, it's not a problem. They are tahara. What are we worried about? Not if the worker touches the inside of the barrel. We're worried about if they open it and something else touches the inside of the barrel. However, that you don't have to worry about. Why? Because the porters know that they have to deliver clean content. So they will make sure that nothing else touches the wine inside. So it is considered, they are not watching it for their friend. They are watching because if they want to make their money to be paid to schlep the stuff from one place to another place, they need to make sure that the item comes clean. It shows up clean at the destination. So he's not watching his chaver stuff. They're watching it for themselves. So therefore, the concept of chazaka in adam masham masha biyad chavedoi doesn't apply here because he's not watching the friends, the other guy's items. I'm watching my own thing because I want to make money. So that's the reisha. That's why we say it's toil. So yihache seifenami. So if that's the case, if they're watching and making they themselves are toil, why in the seifa just because they don't see him that do we say that's tummy? Nami. So the Gemarrah in the sefer, the problem is that because he's so far away, they are not careful. They're going to open up the thing and they're going to make sure nothing touches inside, but they can take out wine. But if a friend comes along and it says, "Oh, you giving out wine? Let me take a little bit of wine as well." Yeah, go ahead, take the wine. The owner just made us go into the mikveh because he's crazy. But they're not. So for myself, I'm going to make sure I'm taught. But if a friend of mine shows up and takes out wine, I don't care. So therefore, in the sefer where they can't be, where the owner is far away, they would allow someone else to dip their vessel, the hand into the wine. So the Gemarrah sagt, what difference does it make if the guy's far or close? If they allow another Ama'adetz to touch the thing, then it would become tuma as well. And he can't say, "Oh, we don't know if he's going to show up," because if you're traveling down a desert, you can look far and look, behind you, in front of you, and the sides, and see if the owner's coming. So why in the Reisha do we say that it's tal? If you allow another Ama'adetz to touch the wine, it could become tal. We're talking about that they actually do not know if it could show up. And it's not just talking about a place where you can look far and see if the owner's coming. It's a city, and he might show up from any side street, and therefore they are making sure that the barrel stays closed. And even if they touch themselves, it's not a problem because they are toilet themselves. Seifa also, they don't, even though it's far away, they don't know if he might show up from anywhere. As soon as you tell them, go, and I will come later, they already know that, he's not going to show up so fast. So what's the maskana here? The maskana of this whole Gemarrah is basically saying this, that a person does not watch someone else's items from becoming tummy. Person does not watch that. And therefore, by the case of picking up the scarf that fell down, because even though the other guy is tahara, but because he's only another guy, when he picks it up, he has hisek hadas. Why does he have hisek hadas? Because he says basically, my friend that asked me to pick up the garment does not know right now if I'm tahara or not. He assumes I'm tahara, but does not know, maybe I'm not. So because he assumes, he's maybe not careful about it. So therefore I'm not going to pick it up thinking that I want to keep it tahara. So while I pick it up for my friend, I have hisek hadas. So the hisek hadas is not on the owner that it fell, then hisek hadas is on the guy that picks it up. And therefore, as soon as he has hisek hadas, that is a klal. Once you have hisek hadas, the item becomes tuma. Why again? Because we want to, if you are careful about eating, touching, and conducting yourself in a toileting way, any hisek hadas is not going to be good. And that's the end of Perek Sheni. And the end of the beginning of tuma. We're going to continue a little bit more into tahara, and then we're going to be finished. Chaim.